Welcome to the Healthcare Revolution podcast, where we empower you to take control of your health, strive to create a community of trust in healthcare, and achieve lasting wellness. I am your host, Brad Powell, doctor of physical therapy and owner of an award-winning clinic here in the Salt Lake Valley. Each episode, we dive into all things injury prevention, overall health, and bring you expert insight from leaders across our industries. Please note, while we strive to provide you with the best knowledge and advice, that the opinions shared on this podcast represent those of the experts and do not replace professional medical advice. So let's revolutionize healthcare and wellness together. I'm so excited to have here with me Aleks. He is an absolute rock star in this world. We're going to be talking about all things helping you reach your goals and get to the next level. We're talking about the secrets of longevity on this podcast. And Aleks, welcome to the podcast this morning.
Thanks so much, Brad. Super pumped to be here.
Aleks is a doctoral student up at the University of Utah. Just has a few months left till he takes boards and graduates, so he's almost a big doctor.
Yeah, it's coming up quick.
He's been with our team for almost 10 weeks.
Yep.
And it's been a pleasure to serve along his side and work with him and patients. And he just does an incredible job at educating the public on truly making change in health. We introduced this new challenge to all of our social media followers, but more importantly, our community here locally. So our company, we introduced it as a quarterly goal to do three things. One, we want them to do 30 minutes of exercise, and that could be walking, it could be anything simple, right? But it has to be intentional. You can't just walk at work and call that as exercise. So 30 minutes a day, you get 1 point for that. Number two is you have to stand for 12 out of 24 hours. So you just have to stand up, sit back down. The whole idea is to keep you moving throughout the day and not just sitting for a long period of time. So you get an additional point for that. So you get 2 points a day. For 3 extra credit points per week, you can get 30 minutes of intense exercise. And intense exercise can be a lot of different factors. We've just defined it as 7 out of 10 difficulty on what we call the RPE scale, rate of perceived exertion. So you just got to figure out, 7 out of 10 difficulty. And you do that for 30 minutes 3 times. So that's a total of 17 points for the week. And we have some prizes going out, getting people excited about it. But the goal is to get people to commit to a 12-week program. So I want to hear from Aleks. Tell me what you feel about this challenge being in your world. You've studied a lot. You're just getting your doctorate in this. Tell us about your thoughts.
Yeah, definitely. I think when you first told me about this challenge, I was really excited. My friend and I do a challenge every year in November where we do some kind of activity every day for the 30 days. And it's always just such a great time because you realize how hard it is to actually add in this extra piece, but it makes you grateful over time because you kind of discipline yourself over those 30 days. And so when you said, let's do a challenge for 365 days, I got super pumped. I was like, yes, 30 minutes a day. It's open. You can pick what you're going to do. It seemed very approachable to me. You could pick, walking your dog intentionally. You could pick riding your bike. You could go to the gym. You could walk on the treadmill. You could run. You could do your weights. And so I got pretty excited about it.
It's awesome. I love it. I used to work in the ICU at a hospital. And I know a lot of people are thinking like, okay, 365. That's 365 days in the year. That's perfect, right? I did this challenge a couple of years ago and it was hard. There's days I was traveling and the time changes mess me up. I'm like, oh my gosh, I have an hour. I got to get in a run before the end of the night and it's 11:30, and or I'm sick and just not feeling like it, right? So 365 days is challenging. But, working in the ICU, people that are bedridden and bedbound, like sometimes that just means doing something small, right? We used to get these little arm bikes in the bed, get people's heart rate up. We have them do some ankle pumps, just sit up at the side of the bed and bend their knees and straighten their knees. That is exercise, right? For them.
Definitely.
And sometimes if you're sick or you're not feeling well, sometimes just getting out for a brisk walk, right?
Exactly.
But this is doable. This is doable for every single person. And even if it's you split it up where you're, 10 minutes walk in the morning, 10 minutes in the afternoon, and 10 minutes at night, this is very doable.
Oh, I like that.
Tell us about why do you think we would challenge our employees just to commit? We didn't tell them about the 365-day challenge. That's my ultimate goal of where I want to get people. But why do you think we would set a 12-week challenge?
Definitely. So, from my experience with the literature, the 12 weeks is kind of the number on when you can kind of create longer lasting habits. And so, I think the 12 weeks being important for the employees is just being able to consecutively do something that over time becomes way easier. If you think about it like a record player, you set the pinpoint down into the groove of the record. Over that 12 weeks, that groove becomes deeper and deeper. And suddenly, people are just end up doing it. They're like 30 minutes a day. Oh, no big
Easy.
deal. Easy. And that's what we're really going for, because 12 weeks, yeah, you build the habit, and then 365 days kind of seems like nothing in the end.
Yeah, absolutely. I love this idea of momentum. This is a quote from Darren Hardy. Consistency is the key to achieving and maintaining momentum. Right. The whole idea is we're trying to create momentum. Momentum means it becomes easier over time. You start with a small snowball. Anyone that's ever built a snowman, and you roll it, and it gets bigger and bigger. But once you get it to a certain size, all of a sudden it's like, it's just big. It's huge, right? And
Yeah.
it's cumulative, and it doubles in size, right? And that's what leads to massive results. So small daily actions lead to these massive results. If you think about physics, the equation for momentum is mass times velocity, right? And if we have this metaphor of building these daily habits, the mass is really represents the foundational actions or the habits we're trying to create, and the velocity represents the frequency or repetition in which we do that, right? Obviously, we want our trajectory or our momentum to be carried in a certain direction, right? So we have to get the direction right first, right? What are the goals we're trying to create, the habits we're trying to create, and then let's figure out how much repetition do I want to do towards that? How much speed do I want to do towards that? And that's going to be different for everyone. Tell
Right.
me about the patients that you see and how that equation can vary between different patients.
I have a lot of different clients. I have some young tennis players. I have people middle age, and I
Yeah,
have
tell us about your tennis goal or like what you've done tennis wise.
oh, totally.
Incredible athlete here and some big goal or some big awards that you've won.
My life was mostly soccer, and I picked up tennis about 3-4 years ago. Got hard into it, being coached, working on my tactics, working on my skills. I joined a team in Utah, and we won sectionals, we won regionals, we went to nationals in San Diego, and then we actually won as a team nationals in San Diego, 3-5 men's tennis. So I went 5-0 too in my matches, so we won every single one.
Tell us about a little bit about before we jump into the patients again. Tell us about what consistency you have to do
Yeah.
to become that good at tennis.
Well, I think part of it is being humble enough to accept feedback, because you learn these patterns of movement, and sometimes they're not always the best ones to be using on the court. And so the coach says, hey, you got to change this, you got to change that. I was doing lessons 2 to 3 times a week and playing on the weekends for 2 to 4 hours over the course of those 2 years training.
A lot of practice.
It's a lot of practice.
And you did that, I'm sure, consistently.
Yeah.
Like
Every week.
single week.
Mhm.
My goodness, that's a lot of consistency.
Yeah.
So you come as an expert in this topic because you know what it takes to do that too.
hmm
So tell us about the patients that you have to work with and how you have to customize this aspect of momentum to them.
Definitely. So I'd say I have like some young tennis players. I used to have this woman who was 85 years old. She worked at Intel, I think, still crushing it. And then I have like a lot of middle-aged adults who have families and work full-time jobs. And so it's really about integrating it into their life in the way that best works for them. The best example I have is I have this one client who works out 5:45 in the morning, and he loves it, gets it done, and then goes about his day.
And that works for him.
And it works for him. And then his wife really wanted to try it and get on board, start working out. And so she tried doing it at his time, because he just suggested like, hey, this might work for you. And I think she stuck with it for, 3 months maybe, but it was on and off. She'd have cancels. And we got to the bottom of it being that time didn't work for her.
Yeah.
What was her time? 7:45. She could get up, help with the kids, do whatever she needed to do, get her day started, and then boom, work out. And that was one of the most profound things. And since then, I think it's been about 3 years, she's worked out consistently 4 days a week.
That's awesome. So it's all about finding the optimal load or the optimal repetitions or timing for people.
Yeah.
Because some people aren't morning people.
True.
Sometimes that just doesn't work for you. Sometimes your life circumstances does not match up with that.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean you have to force it, right?
No.
Find something that works for you. I
Exactly.
love it. Any other things? Any other parameters?
Yeah,
on
totally.
that?
So I'd say like with younger athletes, they're already doing so much. They're playing so much tennis. They're playing tennis 5, 6 days a week. And so really dialing in what they need specifically to make it beneficial for their tennis, not to slow them down in that regard. And that's what you were talking about with picking the direction. So maybe not doing super heavy resistance training in the in season, but doing more plyometric power endurance training in season to keep them at an appropriate level for their tennis game.
Yeah. And in the rehab space, we do this a lot where we have to meet people where they are and say, okay, this is where you are, this is where you want to go.
Yeah.
And people think that they can just jump, right? It's like, oh, I want to be able to run a triathlon in 2 months. I'm like, okay, how much you've ran so far? I haven't ran anything.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, we got some work to do, right? We
Yeah.
got to build that bridge. We got to create steps to get there.
Yeah.
You got to give me a good timeline in which we can make that work, right? But 2 months is not enough to be able to train for a triathlon if you haven't been training already.
Yeah.
Right. And sometimes that reality with people is really hard. But helping people see that there might be 15 phases that you need to go through to get there. And if you're going to give me a shorter timeline, it's going to be more painful, maybe physically, where you're pushing your body super hard. You have to change things nutrition wise, sleep wise. Like you're going to have to adapt a lot of things in your life to be able to hit that timeline.
Definitely.
Now, if you give me 6 months to a year, then we can talk about how we're going to train for that and how we're going to put things in place to be able to make that work, right? Say, for instance, someone just wants to be able to play with their grandkids on the ground,
Yeah.
right? They had a total knee replacement. They can't get to the ground. They don't have the strength. They don't have the range of motion. I might have to put, 10 phases in there of working towards that. But sometimes that's what we have to do, right? Figure out the direction that where we want to go.
Yep.
And get that right first. Then figure out what are the habits I need to create to make that work. And then figure out, okay, what are the frequency or repetitions that I need to do that, and then make it happen, right? And
Definitely.
set the motivation there, and then you just create this massive momentum, and you get excited about it, and no longer becomes like this huge burden. It's something you're excited about.
Yeah, definitely.
Tell me how that's worked for you.
Yeah, I would say, I did all the diets. I even went back to the Atkins. I did the, a carnivore diet. I did the ketogenic diet, all as trying to just lose weight quickly or to see a certain result in a short period of time. And they work for those things, but to make lasting change for myself and to create specifically for me a diet that was robust enough to fuel my training, but also allow me to be at the target goals for my weight and what I wanted to do in my life. It really just took small changes over a long period of time. It wasn't those quick 6 to 8 week challenges.
21-day fix.
Yeah. 21-day fix. Like, yeah, sure. If you're trying to lose weight 21 days for a wedding, like you can do it, but it might not stick around, and you might
come back most likely.
You'll gain weight on the back end, 100%.
Yeah, tell us about these challenges that you see, online. A lot of them kind of give the mixed idea to the general population, like I can get ripped in 60 days or 90 days. Tell us about your thoughts on that.
Well, I think they're there for a reason, right? And people will show pictures because it works, and that can really get people clued in and excited about doing the challenge. But I think what you were talking about with like picking the direction, picking the intensity and frequency of how you go about choosing something. If you do something with such high intensity for a short period of time, you run the risk of the ramifications on the back end being high intensity over a short period of time.
Yeah.
Versus if you make small changes over a longer period of time, the gradual change on the back end of that is likely to be less intense. So if we look at the exercise thing, if I just drastically reduce my calories, work out, 2 hours a day for 21 days, oh yeah, you'll see some change. But that's a stress to your body as well. So your body is going to react to that in a way which might not be beneficial. That might be you not exercising for the next 6 months and eating a caloric surplus of 2,000 calories a day, which will have the negative impact and the results that you don't want.
Thinking about like all these patients that come into our clinic that are like, oh, my knees hurt. Do I need to get an MRI, or I need to get, surgery for my knee? And we start diving into their behavior and what they've been doing. And it might be a guy, it's January 1st, and he's like, I'm just getting back to running. He started running on the treadmill 3 miles a day. Then you start digging into it more. It's like, okay, how much you've been running last year? Well, I haven't been running at all last year.
Yeah.
It's like, Well, you don't need surgery. You don't need an MRI for your knee. You really just need load capacity, right? We need to gradually
Yeah.
increase this, not just overnight, just hit it. A lot of people develop these habits in their, teenage years and in their 20s, and all of a sudden they hit their 30s and 40s and they train the same way and it doesn't work, right? Because they develop tendonitis and tendinosis and all these different injuries, but it's all about load capacity,
Yeah.
right? If we ramp that up slowly over time, it goes well. If you ramp it up too fast, you develop all these little, pains.
Yeah.
And that's what we're here for, is to help people see that consistency is the most important thing that you can do.
100%. And I think that, if you develop these little pains over time, that just sets you further back, because then it's harder to approach that gradual progression because you're like, I'm in pain.
Yeah.
And woo, it just gets harder from there.
Absolutely. We're going to dive into this study that we saw about this comparison MRI. I did a similar study in school, but this was back in 2011. We'll post this in our podcast as well, so you can check it out. But the MRI scans of these three athletes' thighs were incredible. You had a 40-year-old triathlete, you had a 70-year-old triathlete, and you had a 74-year-old sedentary man. Right. And tell us about your thoughts on what the MRI looked like. You looked at it this morning.
Definitely. It wasn't surprising to me, but that's because I know the research. But the 40 and 70-year-old person thigh cross section looks very similar,
Yeah, almost identical.
almost identical. And that's because they've been training consistently for a period of time, which, almost their whole life. And it's thick with muscle.
Yeah.
And the sedentary person, you have a little bit of muscle around the bone and then mostly fat around the outside.
Yeah. And you think about all these people in assisted living homes and all that,
Yeah.
70 years old, a lot of them, right?
It's a lot.
But then you have this triathlete that the thigh muscle looks just as healthy as a 40-year-old triathlete. And
Yeah.
it's incredible
Yeah.
what consistent little things over time, how that can be cumulative to your health.
Definitely.
How do you see this in a clinical space?
I mean, it's super important, I think, as I'm going to become a clinician, and even now just working personal training, I think getting rid of the notion that as we age, we don't have the capacity to build muscle, to build endurance, to build cardiorespiratory fitness, and to improve our health. I think we need to stomp that out completely. As we see in this photo, a 40-year-old person can have the same, almost identical muscle mass and size as a 70-year-old person. It just takes those small, consistent changes over a period of a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. What happens to muscle mass as we age? So say you hit that 30-year-old, 35-year-old, what happens to muscle cells, anatomically speaking or physiologically speaking?
So a lot of the research indicates that as we age, we lose muscle mass, we lose bone density, and these things are true.
This isn't just atrophy. This is muscle cells, right?
Cell.
Muscle cells you don't get back.
Right.
Muscle atrophy is just purely like you haven't worked it out and then you hypertrophy it gets it stronger, but just a cell going smaller and larger, right?
Right. Exactly. And so over time, you have these windows where you'll have less activity, and those windows then compound, and then that leads to most of the things we see where people are inactive and they have these severe declines in function as they age. But with the consistency over time and continuing to build muscle, usually sticking to and following some guidelines, you don't see as steep of a decline. Their health span, or how well they live functionally long term, drops off much more slow as the x-axis on a graph.
Yeah. I did a study in school with a PhD student, Bobby Briggs, and we put college students in bed for 7 days. My job was I was on a computer and I'd trace the MRI and I'd figure out how much muscle mass was in there and how much fat was in there. And I had to sit there and trace it and figure out the exact percentages. But these college students, they would put them in bed for 7 days. All they could do is just stand up and sit back down to go to the bathroom. They couldn't take
Okay.
any steps.
Mhm.
And they just had to lie there. We call it the bed rest study. And some of these students lost up to 50% of their strength in 7 days,
Yeah.
right? That's atrophy, right? And that's no steps at all.
Right.
And we've learned through other research studies, you have to at least take 1,000 steps to maintain what you have.
Right.
But, just a few days of not doing anything can really have some severe implications to your health,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And the opposite too, right? It doesn't take much to gain it back. But you think about like tearing down a building. How long does it take to tear down a building? It's pretty quick, right?
Pretty quick
Demolition.
compared to
Anyone that's
building it.
working demolition, they know how quick you can tear down a building.
Yeah.
But how long does it take to build it?
Yeah. It takes a while.
It takes consistency. It takes effort. It takes discipline to build a building, but it doesn't take that much to destroy it.
No.
Why does the body break things down? Tell us a little bit about what you know about, tissue repair. Like, why does the body actually, atrophy?
Yeah. So the body likes to maintain this state called homeostasis, where it's in balance. And having a lot of muscle mass or having a high cardiorespiratory fitness takes a lot of work. Your body has to work harder to maintain these things. You have to stress your body in order to maintain these things. And naturally, your body kind of just wants to hang out and be relaxed and not stress too much. And so over time, if you have these parameters like increased muscle mass or your cardiorespiratory fitness is good, and then you say you lay down for 7 days, your body's going to go, oh, well, we don't really need these things. I don't need to work this hard to maintain. We might be in not such a good state here, lying here. I might be injured. And so what it does is it just decreases the metabolic process, which are the hardest to maintain.
Yeah.
So basically like having your cell phone, if you look at like which apps use the most megabytes, it's basically like that. Maintaining that muscle mass is like the most megabytes in your body, and your body goes, well, let's chill on that because we might need to conserve. I may need to push this out.
Yep. And the same thing with tissue repair, right? Because you ever watch a wound heal?
Oh, yeah.
In order for a wound to heal, it has to break down the old and create the new.
Right.
Right. And if our bodies don't have the capability to heal, then we can't recover. Right. And that's one of the mechanisms that happen is the body has to break down to build back up. And if you don't make an active choice to build, whether it be bone density or strength or, any aspect of stressing your body, it will naturally go to the default, which is break down.
Yes.
If you don't choose to break or to build it up, it's consistently going to break it down. So I love that. The best investment that you can make is in your own health, right? If you want to live the life that you always wanted,
Agreed.
you have to invest in your health and take one consistent step at a time. Sometimes it doesn't take a lot, right? If you keep moving your feet forward, but we've known through the research, 12 weeks.
12 weeks.
Create some habits. Make some small habits, right? Maybe it's just you put your shoes on and that's it, to go to the gym and you don't even go, right? And you do that for 12 weeks. And then the next step, do one more thing, right? But start small and keep building from there. And don't lose your old good habits either. Just keep building upon those and become easier and easier as you go. So just to kind of summarize this podcast, we talked about starting small and focusing on daily, like just showing up, leveraging momentum, so important, understanding that momentum equation, making, daily habits that really help you, and then carry that with frequency and speed, figure out that trajectory, and then go get it. We talked about consistency of exercise, how it preserves health and longevity, really kind of highlighting the importance of this podcast, the secret to longevity.
Yeah.
That secret is consistency. If you just start with small and simple things and you build it, you end up developing a strong longevity of health. We talked about that research study about the 40-year-old, the 70-year-old, and it looks almost the same. Muscle mass is very similar side to side. So age is kind of just a number.
Age is definitely just a number.
And the metabolic changes that happen in the body, sure, things slow down.
Definitely.
But you can maintain the majority of the strength that you have at a younger and adult as you carry it into your older adult. Sure, things are going to change. You're not going to be able to lift as heavy. But as far as the muscle mass, the health of the tissue, it can be very similar as you age. Any kind of final reflections or thoughts of encouragement, Aleks, for our listeners today?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's this cool quote on the way into my gym. It's on the back of this rock. It's a quote by Ralph Waldo Emerson, and it says, if you sow a thought, you reap an action. If you sow an action, you reap a habit. If you sow a habit, you reap character. And if you sow your character, you reap a destiny. And I think that correlates really well with consistency over time. Because if you have these ideas that you want to change and you want to evolve yourself, all it takes is just little changes over time. And if you stick with it, then you get what you want.
It's awesome. I love that advice. Well, thanks for joining us today, Aleks. We hope you learned about the secrets to longevity. and that you can implement these little things that'll help you to live a long and healthy life. So
Yeah.
appreciate you coming today and joining us on this podcast.
Thanks so much for having me, Brad. This was awesome.